The interim budget was presented this morning by Mr. Piyush Goyal. The interim budget really doesn't have the kind of sanctity which a full budget has got, for the simple reason that the same party has to come to power and they should have the mandate to implement whatever they have promised in the interim budget. So the interim budget really is more of messaging to voters that if elected, we would be able to provide these benefits to you. It also helps us to understand how the government will find the monies to spend. So they project how government will earn money, how they will spend money, and what kind of deficits they will run up. In that sense, this interim budget clearly shows that the government recognizes that its next term has to be more inclusive and it has to be more targeted. And some of the ideas in this budget are clearly strong in these two areas of inclusion and targeting. The first big idea which has come in the budget is that you are going to see more young people being given the freedom to spend the money they earn the way they want, and they would be needing to pay income tax only when their earnings reach a much higher level. In this case, it is 5 lakhs of income being exempted, and they are still continue to enjoy the benefits of the ATC, which would mean that up to 6.5 lakhs, a young person would enjoy the freedom to spend his money, to save and to invest the way in which he chooses. So this is essentially a freedom that is being given to very young people, and that's a very welcome step. The other thing is in relation to housing. I think that the change in the reinvestment criteria and allowing the assessee to choose how to invest his 2 crores worth of capital gain as a reinvestment is something very interesting, because somebody who has 2 crore of capital gain may want to split it among his children, give each of them a small dwelling, and that freedom being given to them is something which is very appreciable, and it clearly shows a very sharp understanding of what the aspiring middle class wants. So I think that's another very interesting thing. The exemptions on rents, even if you don't rent a house, there was a tax on the notional rent, and these kind of laws were really not fair, and I think that the government has decided that it will do away with them if returned to power. That's another thing. So there are a lot of little things where the government has messaged to the middle class that it is cognizant of their interests, and it would like to empower them more, and it would like to give them the freedom to make choices and not force them by way the laws are structured, and that is something that is very appreciable. The other important aspect which impressed me is the decisive shift towards putting money in the hands of the small and marginal farmers and allowing them to make the choices of how to spend that money. Typically giving 6,000 rupees to each farmer with a land area less than 2 hectares is a step which is merely a beginning. Today, all subsidies travel through middlemen before they are supposed to reach the farmer. Essentially, we all know what happens when you put middlemen between government and the recipient or the intended beneficiary. So that is something which needs to be changed. And by putting the power in the hands of the farmer directly, I believe that the farmer has a much wider choice. His habits in terms of how he uses fertilizer, the mixture, the choice between organic farming and chemical farming, the choice to do a more natural oriented farming where he does use some chemicals but less of chemicals and more of organic farming. So these are all changes that can actually make the farmer benefit by making him free from the clutches of the middleman. And I think that this is mostly at the input stage, and that is a very interesting reform. And I would think that over a period of time, governments will remove the middleman between them and the farmer and give the farmer money directly, more money directly, and do away with all the other subsidies. So this is just a first step, and I would expect governments in the future, whoever forms the government, to move in that direction decisively. So these are some of the simple things that government has put up. Some pointers towards better governance are clearly there. While we did see the promise of minimum government and maximum governance being made in 2014, I think that the problems which this government inherited and the pressures related to those problems really didn't give this government much leeway. So they have again chosen to give a 10-point vision for 2030, in which a lot of aspects have brought in, which are clearly intended to capture the imagination of the young voters. And that's the kind of aspiration that we are trying to market in the minds of the young voters. And I think that the 10-point thing is definitely a very bright idea. And I think that many of the points that have been put there, if implemented with sincerity and passion, will definitely create a better tomorrow for every one of us. So that's another very interesting point that I found in this budget. With relation to the fiscal deficit, I think that we are clearly being told that the government would be less stringent in its approach to fiscal math. While we can debate whether this is economically prudent or not, I think that the need to meet the aspirations of the people is very high and very urgent, and the government cannot afford to ignore them much longer. And so there has to be a sense of urgency in meeting those aspirations, and unless the government takes a little bit of acceptable leniency in the fiscal math, they would not be able to meet the aspirations of the people. So I think that the leeway that is being taken in the fiscal math is slightly more next year than it was historically. Of course, last year there was a lot of leniency that is taken, but that can be taken as a pre-election year. But going forward, the government, I think, is going to shift the trajectory and focus on meeting the aspirations of people. And this is a shift. And whether it's a welcome shift or not would be measurable only in terms of the outcomes that we are going to see once a new government is in power. Clearly, this budget has a lot of messaging about the future, messaging about the vision, and messaging about how government wants to empower young voters. And that essentially is the message of this interim budget. Thank you.